though it's time to welcome everybody tonight to the regularly scheduled November the 1st, can't believe it's November already, Town Council meeting. See a lot of smiling faces and some familiar faces, which is really nice. Yeah, I think we've got the group here tonight that has the record for not only most state golf titles, but most appearances before the council. So truly is a dynasty, right? Huh? Congratulations. We'll get to that in a moment, though. So, like I said, welcome. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. At this time, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Here.
Mr. Anderson. Let the record reflect Mr. Anderson is absent. Ms. Pillion. Here. Ms. Quetch. Here. And Mayor Webb.
Here. This time, we'd like to take up the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Vice Mayor Quetch.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Donna. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Pastor Kevin Campbell to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Source of all authority, authorizer of all that is right, good, and just, you are as far away as the sun is from the moon, and yet you are closer than our next breath. We are not so arrogant as to think that by our governance that we could summon your presence. You will be where you choose to be, and we, most of us, believe that you choose already to be here in all your passionate concern for mortals. And still we wonder, what are we? Human beings that you are mindful of us? What are we that you care for us? We pray then, you doer of mighty deeds, of signs and wonders, that you will watch carefully and listen intently as these servants of the people come together as one body to serve the people. Use these men and women, we pray, to do your outrageous and scandalous work that executes justice for the oppressed, gives food to the hungry, sets prisoners free, opens the eyes of the blind, lifts up those who are bent low by poverty, watches over the stranger, upholds the orphan and the widow. Empower these men and women to nurture the good and the commonweal that flows naturally in our town. Where no choice for the common good, the well-being of all can be made, give this council the grace and courage to make the better choice and the will to make amends with faithfulness. Where choices are between conflicting ideals strongly held, give the members of this council the humility and trust to see through each other's eyes and the conviction to vote with courage that is compassionate and kind. When decisions are made and actions authorized, give the members of this council satisfaction and fidelity, or the will to repent when fidelity has failed. And give us the assurance that you have heard our prayer, because we pray in the name of the Spirit of the one who speaks both out of the whirlwind and the still small voice, and who we believe has helped our town in ages past and is our hope in years to come. Amen.
Thanks so much for coming out. That's a beautiful prayer. All right. That brings us to the approval agenda. Council, I would like to make mention that tonight we have with us Ms. Stephanie Davis, and she does have a fairly lengthy drive, so if it's okay with you all, I'd like to move her kind of up below the proclamation, if that's okay. Is that okay with the council?
Sure.
All right. I don't think, Cam, do we have to adopt that? We can just note that that's the way we're doing the agenda?
Just adopt it as amended.
Okay, all right. So having said all that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the amended agenda as I stated.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Vice Mayor Quetch. Need a second. Second by Dr. Owens. Well, I called you doctor that time. Gotcha. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Ms. Pillion.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
And Mayor Webb.
Aye. All right. That brings us to public comments, and I don't think we have anybody signed up tonight. Is that right, Kim?
That's correct.
All right, excellent. Moving right along to the approval of the minutes. If there's no changes, council, we can take up the October the 4th and 21st meeting minutes at the same time. Any changes that you guys want to make? Okay. If there are none, I would entertain a motion to take both those up at the same time.
I'll make that motion that we approve the minutes for October 4th and the 21st.
Motion by Mr. Owens to approve the October 4th and 21st minutes.
I'll
Do I have a
second it.
Second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. All right. Brings us to you all. So we're so very excited, and usually I pawn off reading these proclamations to the other council members, but I'm actually going to take this one up myself, if that's okay with you all. I'd like to preface it by saying how very proud we are of all of you all. And on a serious note, I know I joke a lot, I try to keep it light, but I will absolutely miss the seniors that are here tonight, because I know we have a few. And I'm very excited to see what else you guys and gals go on to do from this place you are in life. We're very, very proud, but we crafted this proclamation, again, for our, what I would call dynasty. I think it's the 5th state title in 7 years. Is that correct? Absolutely. That's wonderful, wonderful. So at this time, I'd like to read the proclamation to honor and recognize the Abington High School Golf Team 2021 class, 3A state champions, winning back-to-back state titles. And like I said, 5th out of 7th year in a row. That's pretty awesome. Whereas the town of Abington wishes to honor and recognize the Abington High School Golf Team comprised of 9 members and coaches winning the Virginia High Schools League Class 3A State Golf, winning back-to-back titles. Whereas the commitment required for student athletes to be a part of a sports team include meeting required grades, attendance, and volunteer requirements, in addition to attending daily practices and scheduled competition events. And whereas on October the 11th, 2021, the Abington High School Golf Team competed in the Class 3A State Championship at Glenrookie Country Club in Abington, Virginia. And whereas Abington played a remarkable tournament with an even par score of 288, fantastic. The Falcons earned their 6th state title and their 5th state title in the last 7 years. And now therefore, by virtue of the authority invested in me as the mayor on behalf of the Abington Town Council and citizens, I hereby applaud the commitment of the Abington High School Golf Team 2021 Class 3A State Champions, winning back-to-back titles. Signed, Mayor Derek Webb. So very proud of you guys. Give them a round of applause. And Ms. Kingsley, how are we going to do this?
You tell me, sir.
All right. You want to read off the names?
Sure
Let me
will.
hand out the plaques.
Sure will.
Do some pictures, maybe. All right.
This is okay. Yes, first one is Will Watson.
Will's not ready right now. No worries. We'll hold on for it.
Connor Brummett.
Would you mind us starting with one? Won't make you stay the whole time. I'm sorry.
Caleb Brunnett. Am I saying that right? Grace Addison. Katie Hall. Mason Funk. Dalton Minnick. Jason Cook. And Yennesaw Smith. I'd also like to recognize the coaches. Coach Jason Delp. Coach Nick Vyers. And Coach Kenny Schweitzer.
All right. Let's do some pictures. How are we going to do this, council? Stand up back here. It's a good-looking group.
makeup down. I didn't want to
Thank
be in
you
the
all
back.
again so much.
I didn't want to be in the picture.
And we won't keep you guys forever and gals. I know it's a long night ahead of us. But again, I would like to just say how proud we are of you all. This is one of the most special things we get to do as a council is to recognize our young men and women for their accomplishments. And certainly, I can't think of another athletic team in Southwest Virginia that's won 5 out of 7 state titles. Can you pitch, Dale?
No, it's, I did the research on the golf and there's only one other school in the history of Virginia High School League that's won 5 out of 7.
Right?
And that's actually, George Webb High School,
Wow.
within the last 12 years, they've done it.
Incredible, wow. So clearly an elite league of golfers, but we're very, very excited for you all. And thank you for your contribution to our wonderful community. Give them a round of hand. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Do it again next year.
Let's do it. That's it.
Do it twice. Thank you.
Well, it's hard to follow that up, but we're gonna try to do so with some public hearings, if you guys will entertain it. Oh, that's right. No, Stephanie's gonna follow it up. That's it. And she may just wow and amaze us, right? Welcome again.
Yeah, it's good to see everyone. Okay. Just to refresh your memory, I am Dr. Stephanie Davis. I am a collegiate assistant professor at Virginia Tech. I also run the graduate certificate in local government management. Part of what I do and enjoy, I actually think it's my hobby, is helping small communities with a variety of management type projects, and one of which is a pay plan update. I'll tell you just a little bit of this. I have done a number of these in Southwest Virginia for Smith County, you guys in Abington, for the town of Benton, but I also spent some time as a consultant in Virginia and North Carolina before I came over to Virginia Tech, doing these types of plans and updates and that sort of thing. That's just to give you all some credibility, for me, if anything. With that, I'll go ahead, let's see, I think he said turn it on first. I'll give you an update and tell you where we are at this point. So I engaged with the town of Abington in June to conduct a pay plan analysis. We do a number of things. Our goals were to create a pay plan. At that time, the town did not have an existing plan. We needed to identify benchmark local governments, and I'll talk to you about who we chose. That is a collaborative effort between myself and town staff. I give recommendations, they give recommendations, and then we come up with a list of benchmark communities. We have to develop a survey, and it really is email distribution and requesting information from my contacts in the various local governments. I take that information, analyze the data, and present a proposed pay plan for the town. Once we work through that process, making sure that it makes sense for the organization itself, then I will take that new pay plan and appropriately place the employees on that pay plan and develop implementation phases for you all to consider. So we'll walk through that. First of all, we had 14 benchmark communities. That is, and I do this purposely, a significant more than what you typically would see. Normally, other firms or whatever will use between 5 and 7 benchmark communities. I think the more the data, the better. If the data doesn't fit the different positions, then I have the opportunity to take that out, but I would rather have more than not enough. We had the towns of Benton, Ashland, Wytheville, Warrenton, Marion, Strasburg, Bedford, Clifton Forge, Rocky Mount, and Smithfield. We used the city of Bristol and Salem, and the counties of Washington, Tazewell, and Smith. Of those 14 benchmarks, 13 of those responded to the request for data. And I will tell you, the first thing we really look at is who do you compete with in terms of sharing borders. So that's why you have the city of Bristol. That's why you have the county of Washington. And then we look at similar sized towns. Towns are different from counties and cities. You all have positions that counties may not have, and vice versa. So we do a number of the towns similar size. A couple of the towns aren't very close if you think about it in terms of like Warrenton and Smithfield. So I did use some of those numbers, but it just depended on the position. From that, I wanted to let you know that I collected benchmark data for 60 positions in the town, 60 classifications, and I've developed 25 new pay grades, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. The new pay scale does a number of things. Number one, now you have a pay scale. What do we pay employees when we want to try to hire somebody new, if we want to promote somebody, if we need to demote somebody? How does that work with their pay scale, with their pay? So first of all, this is an open range system. I'll let you see that in just a second. That is a minimum, midpoint, and maximum. That midpoint typically represents the market, okay? So that's how we're basing this on. That minimum, midpoint, and maximum gives the ability for the town to set merit or cost of living increases or pay increases across the board. It gives us more flexibility than a step system. You typically see a step system in school divisions where it's 1 through 30, they're 2 1/4 away from each other, and every year the school district has to give 2.25% increases. You have much more flexibility under that open range system. Each grade is 5% between grades, so each minimum is 5% above. That gives clear promotion policies to your employees. If you move from a grade 13 to a grade 14, you know you will get a 5%. Instead of employees saying, I'm taking on additional duties, what am I gonna get? And how does this work? Again, the pay scale is based on the salary data from the benchmark local governments. The market, or the midpoint. The market is kind of what the average person in that position is making among all those different positions. That is equivalent to the midpoint. And we see the midpoint, and this is industry standard, at 15 years in a person's current position. So if you have been a finance director for 15 years, you should be at the midpoint of your grade. If you come into a new position with no experience, you should be at the minimum of the grade. That makes sense. And so the pay plan is set up for a 30% spread, representing that normal 30 years of service, just like we do VRS. After 30 years, you're vested and you can retire. That's how this pay plan is set up. That's the methodology before it. I have provided the town with maintenance policies for the plan, and that speaks to what happens when someone gets promoted, demoted. It speaks to how do we hire. When someone comes in and you're negotiating the salary, it provides some guidance to both the department heads, the HR folks, and the town manager on how we hire employees. What is a good salary? The other thing that has been incorporated is a career development path for some of your employees, some of the classifications. So for example, based on additional training and certifications, we can move employees from a level 1, a level 2, a level 3. And we've done that for a number of the classifications of positions. We also have added lead position titles. So that could be custodial staff, you would have a custodian, and then a lead custodian. And there's a differential in the grades that they're placed in. This is your proposed pay scale, and you cannot see it, and I apologize for that. but we will have the attachments available. So a grade 7 is going from 26 to 35,000. That goes all the way to grade 32, to 89,000 to 118. You can see the midpoint there. The starting rate for the pay plan is $12.70. You're in compliance with the minimum wage requirements as of January 1, and that will take you for a couple years. So that was part of the reason why we set that at that rate. Your pay scale really does go from a grade 1 to a grade whatever you want it to be, but this is where the employees placed out based on the market data is in between that 7 and 32. And again, I don't think you'd want to use grades 1 through 6 because they're not going to meet the minimum wage requirements as of January 1. This is your proposed classification plan. Your proposed classification plan, based on job duties, responsibilities, education required, experience, certifications, employees are placed in a hierarchical plan based on their position. And we do this based on classification. So you can see we go from the custodian, your customer service associate, your laborer 1, they are all in grade 7. And then it goes on from there. So you can see a couple things that I referred to. You can see the cashier 1, cashier 2. You can see the head lifeguard, the laborer 2, the mechanic 1 at a grade 10, all the way through your manager, your kind of office manager position at a grade 12. We have 60 classifications, which is significant for a small town, but putting in those career paths is going to be really important for future growth for your employees and for the town. So that also increases the number. The classification plan again goes, you start into about the grade 20s where we're starting to see our assistant directors, our directors, and then going all the way up to the police chief. This is typical of pay plans. Directors, depending on their job duties, depending on their responsibilities, can be in different levels. And you typically see your police chief at the highest level, given the nature of that position. So that's at a grade 32. We do not classify the town attorney if there is a full-time one on staff, or the town manager. Those are at-will employees. They're under contract with you all, so they're not included in the classification plan. Good. I'm going to keep talking. Okay. So once we have the classification plan, we have the compensation plan, we have our new pay system, now we have to make sure that our existing employees are placed appropriately on that new pay scale. So the first thing we want to do is make sure everyone is at the minimum, okay? And so, let me see. I might flip back and forth. So in terms of minimum of the new pay plan, this impacts 22 employees. We had a total of 89 employees that we ran through the new pay plan. So 22 of those need to be at the minimum of the grade. This is your first priority as council. The salary cost for that is $34,000, and then total cost with benefits, and I received that information from the finance office, the benefits that we pay, the Virginia retirement system, pension contribution, the Virginia retirement system, life insurance contribution, and workers' comp. So those three benefits percentages are included. Total cost is then $39,062. The next piece we need to do is place employees from the minimum to the maximum based on their years of experience in their current position. And this is important. This study is not about performance. And I want to make that very clear. I didn't say, is this a good employee or not a good employee? This is a very neutral methodology. We take the position, and we say, how long has that person been in that position, and we will move them along that minimum to maximum based on their years of service. So what that means, if you have a custodian with 15 years of service, their proposed new salary is at midpoint, because that's your 15 years. If you have a accounts payable clerk that has been here 30 years, they will be at the maximum, because that's where they need to place.
But we're not gonna move anybody down, I just wanna make sure.
That's correct. We have not moved anyone down. Yeah, there are no salary reductions for any employee as a result of this. So the second priority is to make sure that we place employees on the range based on their years of service in their current position. I also want to clarify to the town council and Mr. Mayor that when we talk about current position, that's different than how long have you been with the town. You could have been here for 20 years, but only been a department director for 2 years. We're not going to pay you as a department director for 22 years. You only held that position for 2. Does that make sense? So that also can be, sometimes that can be a little confusing. For adjustments across the range, we have 24 employees that are impacted. Again, we had 89 in the study. Salary cost, it's $61,096, and then total cost with benefits, $69,545. Again, just to reiterate, your priority one, based on budget and based on your approval and that sort of thing, and you are not approving this tonight, this is just information. Employees get placed on the new pay plan with the minimum of the scale adjustments and then moving the other employees along the range. Total cost to implement, this is an annual cost of $108,000. $108,607. And the other thing, if the council considered during your budget discussions, if you implemented this in January, that would obviously be half the cost. $54,000 is a current year impact. So with that, it's pretty straightforward, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I would like to thank the town staff for all of their input with this. This was a very good project, and I appreciate it.
All right, council, what questions do we have for Stephanie? Pick her brain while she's here, she's very intelligent.
Well, I would just ask, as far as education and experience, when we hire somebody, does that not play a role in this?
It does. So let's remember what we were trying to do.
Okay.
We were trying to get current employees onto a new pay scale. What will happen when a new person is hired, the education, the experience, the years of doing that particular work is all factored into the offering salary. So that's outside of this, but the policies that I provided the town staff speaks to it. If someone has 5 years of experience in that position, so they're a police officer over in Bristol and they're coming here to Abington, we're gonna recognize that 5 years experience and not put them at the minimum. We'll push them up about 5% above the minimum based on those years of experience. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
What about evaluations?
So,
Performance.
I'm sorry?
Performance and evaluation.
So keep in mind, this does not look at performance of employees. It doesn't matter to me when I'm running my methodology if they're good or bad. What you will want to do is to consider a performance evaluation system after this is adopted, and then you'll have that in place. Where you do evaluations, you can set a 5% performance increase, and that's based on your score on the evaluation, and then that would get factored in to their salary. It doesn't affect the plan.
Yeah, I can expand on that. So in order for us to really start a process of fully training the managers and getting them familiar with how, the right way to, conduct performance evaluations is to get this baseline, and then probably starting in January, we're gonna start the process of getting the department heads some training on what, how we're gonna use a standard performance evaluation system, and then some of these things can be incorporated, because like I said I said this to the staff at a meeting last week, just because you have 28 years of experience or whatever, doesn't mean you should be the highest paid employee, and I hate to say it, but you get people that kind of get comfortable in their job and they're just not performing, and so you don't want to pay, in my opinion, you shouldn't pay somebody just because they have 25 years of experience over somebody who's got 15, who is got more skills and is better at a better performance. So it gives us flexibility within this range to do that, and that's what we're going to try to work with. John East and I are going to work with the department heads and the managers develop that system, so if, especially with the additional certifications and such, hey, if you get this training, this is where we're gonna move you. There are certain instances where we can move somebody from a 1 to a 2, because we might say, okay, if these certifications kind of put you into this next tier, because I'll give you an example, maintenance. I'm gonna use maintenance technicians because it's an easy one to use, and it's one that we've actually been through this, and so when we had this draft, we realized, wow, we've gotta create some layers here, because we're trying to recruit people that have more experience, and we can't hire them for the 1. I mean, the 1 is probably gonna come in and just be a basic maintenance technician, doing some basic stuff. We were trying to get people that had maybe some certifications or experience working on HVAC systems. And talking to like Matt Henderson, who's our director of facilities maintenance, he's like, if we can get our guys trained on getting these certifications, they can actually do this work. It'll actually save us money. Because right now we're calling some of the HVAC people and electrical people. So not only could it help the employee, because we can move them up to like a different grade, a 2 or a 3, but it'll actually, in the long run, in some instances, this one specifically could save us money. So those are the kind of things we want to try to promote. There's also other forms of licenses and certifications that employees can get. Those are a little bit easier to quantify, because you can say, hey, if you get the certifications, this is what we're going to do. But we've been through a lot this summer trying to hire positions that we realized that the market is dictating this upward pressure to these salary scales. And, we're competing not only with other municipalities, but with the private sector. And depending on what that employee's looking for, we can offer great benefits in a VRS or whatever, but some folks aren't looking for that. Some folks are just looking, now we can't take that into consideration in every instance, because in every instance we're gonna say, that's fine, if you don't want it, you can walk. We have a very good overall compensation plan. But what we have to realize, with certain positions, they can go to the private sector, and then at some point, it's like, okay, this is about as much as we can pay, and that's what, I had this discussion with several department heads. We really shouldn't be paying more in government for this position, because if you pay more than this amount, you have to start looking at alternative service deliveries. Could we do better at contract operations, or could we do better at contracting out? And I'll give you an example. We lost a GIS technician. Last Friday was her last day. And it's gonna be very, very difficult to replace her, because the market for GIS and IT is just going through the roof. We're not gonna change our pay grade, because for government, we're probably where we need to be, but we're not gonna be able to compete with the private sector either. So we're looking at, is this something that maybe we have to contract out? It can be done remotely. It can be done, and it's an easy thing to do. But there's a lot of jobs that can't be contracted out, and there's a lot of jobs that you will lose quality of service if you contract out. So those will only be used in limited instances, but because if we can't hire a certain position, doesn't mean we automatically have to bring that position up all the way. There are times where we can look at alternative service deliveries, intergovernmental cooperation with other local governments, sharing resources and those types of things. We're just gonna have to be very, very open-minded and flexible, I think, as governments going forward, because there's a lot of pressure on us to move wages up, but we have to do it very smartly, because, this is your taxpayer resource, and we need to be very mindful of that, and to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our buck.
Makes sense.
Okay.
And, procedurally, what council approves is the budget, and I guess factored into that is gonna be, I guess, in a backhand way, that this is approved or not, but the council itself isn't gonna approve the pay plan. The town manager decides who gets paid what, other than
Right.
if you wanna give the
We're
town
just
attorney.
giving you our grace.
Right, I wanted everybody to understand, because we've been working on this for a
I
while.
was gonna say, unless they wanna give the town attorney a raise, then that's their decision.
No, you said what Stephanie said,
You're not part of the plan.
you're an independent contractor. You're an independent contractor.
Continue.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is make sure you understood the process, and you understood what it is we were doing, and that there will be changes to this. This is what you see today, and I actually did email this to them
Oh, good.
last week,
Good.
which is, and I could give you a printed one if you wanted to see it, which is more readable than the one that's embedded in the PowerPoint, so some of you may have already been able to look at it before the meeting. But as market pressures change, and I'm just gonna throw something out there, police officers, it is one of the most difficult positions to recruit right now, and we've been very, very successful, and I owe a lot of that to Chief Holbrook and previous leadership in the police department, and current management and lieutenants. We have a really good staff over there, very good management. And we are really known as one of the premier law enforcement agencies in Southwest Virginia. And I say that because we have a lot of instructors who teach at the academy, and that's evidence of that. But that doesn't do it for everybody. We got to be competitive. And so, you know, Chief told me last week or something, oh, this jurisdiction just raised their starting rate for officers. And so what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to give this range to the chief and say, when you post for a position now, you're going to post this range, and depending on the years of qualifications, you know, we might be able to get, you know, another officer from another jurisdiction, you know, with lots of years of experience, if we have some of this flexibility.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know how I am. You and I talk
Yeah,
so
that's
well.
We're
I
both
was
Italian.
telling the town manager, there are sweeping changes and increases for police in the Richmond area, and they will be coming this way. I mean, that's all there is to it. I did a pay study for a county, actually in the eastern part of the state about a year and a half ago, right when COVID was hitting. By the time we had the Board of Supervisors had adopted the pay scale for the police department, the police chief was already having to hire $1,000 above what the minimum was. I mean, just blanket, that they had to do that. So that is certainly one.
And that's what
we wanna
happened here,
watch.
because when
Yes.
she sent me, you know, the pay plan draft, there were positions that during this summer, as we tried to hire these positions, we had to move.
Yep.
I mean, the last 4 months, or 3 months, I would say, have been the most volatile, you know, in the market right
COVID
now.
has really thrown a wrench into everything.
And people are leaving for various reasons, whether they wanna work from home, or they wanna have more flexibility. The market has completely changed. And I think a lot of you are seeing that because a lot of you are working in the private sector. So we've gotta try to be flexible, as much as we can as far as our compensation levels, but also get some of these people up who are under market, so we can at least retain some of these employees that we have right now. So that's the key. And fortunately, I've talked to Steve about this, you know, because this is an annualized number, and because our payroll figures are down right now, because we have a lot of open positions that haven't been filled yet, you know, we have the ability to implement this pay plan, you know, at least to get the minimums up to this, you know, probably within the next month, try to implement that. And like I said, that's an annualized number, and that's really a small amount that we could utilize. And then, talking to Steve, as long as the numbers look good over the next couple of months with revenue, I would expect that we could probably go to step 2 of this process in the 3rd quarter of the fiscal year, sometime between January and March, and get at least everybody, our current employees that we have now, up to where we need to be here in this plan. And then going forward, we'll talk about these things during the budget process. And about COLA, because that was something I said Steve wanted me to warn everybody about, but just inflationary pressure and cost of living is just really, really changing things. Particularly for the people on the lower end, if things are costing more money. Goods, and milk, gas, and things like that, and we've really gotta be cognizant of that, going forward. So that discussion will be had later on, during the budget process. But this was a general idea. I don't think this is going to change probably as presented, unless something happens drastically between now and, you know, the next week or two when we formally implement this. But just didn't know if there was any questions, any more questions of
I don't think
Stephanie
so.
or me.
Council, any questions?
Yeah. And Johnny's will be responsible for administering this.
Yeah.
She's here in the back, and she's,
Well, thank you, Stephanie, very
Yeah,
much.
it was
Thank
very
you.
good to
It's
see you all
always-
again.
Yeah, you too.
Definitely, thank you.
Don't be a stranger. You can join us for a council meeting anytime.
Oh, I know, and I appreciate that invitation.
thanks, Stephanie.
Safe travels.
Thank you for having me early as well.
Absolutely. All right. And as I prematurely said a few minutes ago, now we have the public hearing. So we've got a couple of different public hearings tonight. The first is a public hearing pertaining to the lease of a property between the town and KVET Food Stores Incorporated, doing business at Food City, to operate concessions located at 78 Cook Street, also known as the Meadows. Jimmy, I think you were gonna kinda explain where that came from?
Yeah, I was gonna just start off by stating, because it's a new thing on the agenda, but before we take any formal action, we have to have this public hearing. And I wanna say it was probably in, Jennifer, did we send that out in August or September, that registration of interest? September. In September, we sent out a notice for a registration of interest, seeking local businesses, if there was any interest in operating the concessions at the sports complex. And we did receive a response from Food City, and we started a dialogue with them on how, if it could be possible, on them being able to contract with them to operate the concessions at the sports complex. And some of the thoughts behind not having the town do it was there's an extreme amount of responsibility and maintenance, and it's very difficult for us to focus our attention on the athletic fields and the maintenance of those and the programs if we're worried about concessions. That's something that can be turnkey, that can be turned over. And I know that there were discussions that we had with some of the people on the Recreation Advisory Commission about, in the past, we had in other facilities like Latcher, which we'll still be able to do. They have some of the groups, the organizations, do that. But on this particular complex, it's very important that we have consistency and predictability. So that decision was made to go out and seek a local business, preferably a local business who could do this. So what you have before you is just a draft lease. It's been developed or prepared by primarily Cam and Jennifer Johnson, and working with the end user or the vendor on some particular items that they had sought as far as the use of the actual space there. It is just a draft. I mean, they do have to take one more, I think, tour of the facility to finalize this, but we wanted to be able to just put this in front of you, have the public hearing, see if there were any comments prior to any final adoption, and that would come at a subsequent meeting. More than likely, we would just bring it for formal adoption at the December meeting. And more than likely, it's possible we could bring the second draft, or the final draft, if there's any changes to the next work session, and then peg for a formal adoption at the December meeting. So that's the basis for the public hearing, but I wanted to try to throw that out there because we haven't really talked about it before, and so it's something that we'd like to get in place by the end of the year.
All right. Excellent. So with that being said, and the preface about the public hearing, at this time I will open the floor. If anybody would like to come forward and speak about the lease of the property between Town of KVAT Food Stores and Abington, they can do so at this time. Anybody like to come speak? Having no one come forward, we'll close that public hearing and move on to the next set of public hearing. The next one, I think, Cam, we can take all three of those up at one time, correct? Okay. So we have a public hearing pertaining to a proposed zoning map amendment to rezone tax map ID 104A31 parcel consisting of 0.65 acres more or less located at 430 Porterfield Highway, Abington, Virginia, from M1 Limited Industrial District to B2 General Business District, as well as B, a proposed zoning map amendment to rezone tax map ID 104A32 parcel consisting of 4.24 acres more or less located at 555 Porterfield Highway, Abington, Virginia, from M1 Limited Industrial District to B2 General Business District. And then lastly, C, a proposed zoning map amendment to rezone tax map ID 104A33 parcel consisting of 1.19 acres more or less located at 520 Porterfield Highway, Abington, Virginia, from M1 Limited Industrial District to B2 General Business District. Council, we spoke about this at the last meeting, so I'll go right into the public hearing and I'll open the floor if anyone would like to come forward and speak about those three rezonings. Anybody like to come up and speak? All right, no one's coming up. We'll close that public hearing. Take it up later. Let's see here. No resolutions tonight. And that brings us to the first reading of an ordinance. The ordinance regarding proposed zoning map amendment to rezone tax map ID 104A31 parcel consisting of 0.65 acres more or less, tax map ID 104A32 parcel consisting of 4.24 acres more or less, and tax map ID 104A33 parcel consisting of 1.19 acres more or less located in the area of 520 Porterfield Highway. Mayanna, did you have anything? I know we talked about this at at great length during the last meeting. Did you have anything you'd like to add?
Good evening. Mayanna Rice, Director of Community Development. I don't really have anything else to add unless you all had some questions. Just for the record, this has gone through the appropriate process. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing in September. We took any additional questions at your mid-month meeting, and then we're here tonight with the first reading. So if you had any additional questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Sure. Council, this is the time to ask those questions if we have it.
Magic words.
That's it. All right.
Drum roll.
If there are no questions, I have to ask the magic phrase, shall this proposal be rejected? Is that right, Ken? Got it right. Anything, council? All right, we'll move on to second reading then.
Sure. Mayor Webb, I'd like to make a suggestion that we waive the second hearing.
Okay. Council? All right. With that being said, I'd entertain a motion to go ahead and move forward with this and waive the second reading.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Owens to go ahead and adopt this ordinance, and how do I need to?
Just waive the second
Just
reading.
waive the second reading? And waive the second reading? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. Thank you. All right, we do have a second reading of an ordinance. I think we've talked about this multiple times. It's an ordinance of the council for the town of Abington, Virginia, for a proposed amendment to Chapter 66, Ordinance Taxation, Article 1 in general, Section 66.3, collection of delinquent taxes by distress, personal judgment, or sale. Council, do we have anything we would like to ask or talk about? I know we've talked about this multiple times. Okay. If there's nothing you guys would like to discuss, we can go ahead and I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Vice Mayor Quetch. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh,
Either one.
Amanda beat you to it. So second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. That brings us to consideration of bids. Tonight, we do have a consideration of a bid for stair replacement for the pedestrian bridge at Norfolk Southern Railroad on Remsburg Drive. Mr. Shaver, the moment you've been waiting for.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Deck Shaver, your interim Public Works Director. As you all are aware, this stairway suffered damage from a collision sometime back and had to be removed. Earlier this year, the town hired Thompson & Litton, one of our consulting engineers, to prepare detailed plans and specifications, structural plans for a stairway replacement. And they completed those plans in August of this year. In September of this year, town staff advertised for bids for construction of a stairway replacement. And we received bids on October 21st and opened them publicly and read them. We actually received one bid only, and that was from Inland Construction of Abington in the amount of $108,500. Inland has completed several projects for the town. Thompson Litton and town staff were confident that they can do this work, and we would recommend for the council to consider awarding the contract for construction of the stairway replacement to Inland Construction in the amount of $108,500, and to authorize the town manager to execute that contract and the associated documentation. Please. Thank you very much.
Sure. Council, do we have any questions for Deb? Seems pretty self-explanatory to me.
It doesn't surprise me that it went higher also.
Ma'am?
It doesn't surprise me that the price went higher.
Right, actually, the engineer's approximation of an estimate was 80 to 100,000. I figured 105,000 myself, came in at 108,500.
Are you saying that after the fact, or are you really?
Both.
I'm putting him on the spot, I'm just kidding. No,
Pretty close. Pretty
it's
close.
going up.
Yeah.
It's going, yeah, costs are going up.
Everything's going up. Everything else.
Yes,
He's smarter than the engineers, that's what he's saying.
That's it.
The price of steel is, all over the place.
Sure.
And,
Well, I know
seeing-
there's a lot of people, didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I've had quite a few people reach out to me about this bridge stair section being replaced, because apparently that was traversed quite often
Yeah.
by some of the residents in that
Yeah.
area. So I'm excited, even though it's expensive, I think we need to move as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and we did have some insurance reimbursements, but obviously they did not, there's an assessment process that takes place. But as we put in the agenda summary report, it was only $45,000 that we received, but they just go based on the appraised value at the time.
So Cam, you need us to go ahead and adopt this tonight, I assume? Okay. All right, council, with that being said, if we don't have any questions for Deck, I would entertain a motion to go ahead and adopt this bid. I guess
And authorize the town manager.
authorize the town manager to complete any paperwork associated with.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Owens, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. Thank you, Deck.
Thank you all.
Mr. Shaver, I wanted to thank you for the work that you've done for the town. while you've
That's
been
very
here.
kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been my privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So new business. Up, we have a presentation by the Virginia Highlands Festival, and I'm excited to hear it. Come on up. I think we've got Miss Deidre Cole and Miss Christine Webb. It's good to have another Webb in the house. Even though I don't know that we're related, but still, you're a Webb. Well,
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for having this evening. I'm the new hire with the Virginia Highlands Festival. Help me know. So, typically, when I talk, I'm usually on the stage. This is a whole different new environment for me. We are particularly honored to be here this evening and represent our board of directors and all the different partnerships that we are forging within our community, which is our refocus of our ship. Thanks to Ms. Christine Webb with Webb Consulting, we're getting back to our grassroots, which is driving tourism to Abington and highlighting our local art through connectivity and creativity. And with all of the troubling times that we are experiencing in our communities, arts and culture is our outlet. And it's also the thermometer of which we are rated, I suppose, in our health as a community. So we are embarking on our 73rd year. Can you believe that? 73 years for the Virginia Highlands Festival. Even in the face of COVID, we are still standing and just grateful to be here. We are working on year-round programming. The brainchild behind that was to bring tourism to the town during other times of the year. So it's not that initially it was our main goal, but especially during COVID, it gave us the opportunity to bring some events that were COVID-friendly, like a mini golf tournament at the Martha, which can be outdoors, social distancing, the holiday market on the lawn of the Martha, and to return to the Martha lawn is just an absolute privilege. All these things we were able to implement with safety in mind, and it became so popular, now it's becoming part of our programming, so now we tend to be year-round.
If I may just jump
Please.
in and touch on that for a moment. I think the Virginia Highlands Festival is in a very unique position right now, given, what's happened in the town. I want to say that Tanya and Tennille have both been terrific to work for. Thank you guys for your support in this year's festival, now the holiday market. I think that they and we can work together to, we don't want to think of the festival as in this vacuum. It's in, Abington, Virginia. That's why people come to the Virginia Highlands Festival. If it were in Big Stone, just don't think it would have the same feel. My husband's from Big Stone. But, so we're in this unique opportunity. And one of the things specifically that I want to mention is, so we do a 10-day antiques and vintage show, 10 days. I can't talk about an antiques and vintage show 365 days of the year. I can talk about it a lot, but we want to bring in the brick and mortar antique shops that we have in town. They created an Abington Antiques Trail a couple of years ago. It was a nonprofit, fell by the wayside. With Tanya and Tennille's help, we're able to bring bring that in, and that is a selling point to get people to come to the 10-day festival and also visit all these stores while you're in town. So that's the approach that we're taking from a marketing strategy, is to, you know,
Cross-promote everything.
cross-promote everything, and Betsy White is here, and we want to, you know, cross-promote what she's doing, because she's a program partner with us, so, and on all our social, you're not gonna just find us talking about the festival from March to July. We're gonna be talking about everything that's happening in Abington, and
Yes.
just wanna make you guys aware of that.
Not to sound cliche, but we stand stronger together.
Yeah.
Yes, so our programming starts in March with Restaurant Week. Then we have our mini golf at the Martha in April. The Summer Festival proper, July 21st through August 31st.
22nd to the 21st.
Thank you. She keeps me straight. And then we have Plein Air Abington in October. And then we just full circle right back to the holiday market again. So I will say, speaking of Tanya, I have to really tout her praises, because she's a big reason why I took this job ultimately, because I realized that the town is our friend. And not that I ever thought differently, but she made it apparent that we were working together, and that being part of a team, and that just struck me in this moment, is not just part of the festival and its board of directors, which are a wonderful group of people, but also with the town as well. And I've been in the Abington business district for almost 30 years with Highlands Ballet Company, and this is a whole new level that I'm very excited to endeavor. And also, that our events are bringing in lodging and meal taxes. I mean, I have a whole bulleted thing that I could just probably throw away, but it's just, we are excited. I am excited about the refocus of this organization, and we are grateful for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
out.
Thanks.
Absolutely, we're excited. I can say personally that I'm a Christmas person. I absolutely love the Mistletoe Market. I'm very, very excited, so look forward to that. All right, so now we have a presentation. I bring up Byram and Betsy for the Historic District boundary expansion to match underlying state historic district boundary. We're excited about hearing about this. I know you guys have put in a lot of hard work.
Yes, we have. Thank you. Good evening to everybody. To the festival. Long time ago, I was the president of the festival twice, and I chaired its 50th anniversary activities. I cannot believe it's, what'd she say, 77 years? 73. Well, yes, tonight Byram and I are here representing the town's Architecture Review Board, which is officially called the Historic Preservation Review Board, to report to you that we've begun the regular process that we do from time to time to review and update our preservation plan and to seek your input and approval of our early plans. There are few Virginia towns to rival Abington in its appeal as a good place to live, to work, and to visit. Its front door is its historic district, referred to by one reviewer as what many communities envy and strive for. Throughout its history, Abington's elected leaders have valued and protected the district, looking upon its charm and beauty as a welcome mat to everyone who walks, jogs, runs, or drives through it. Its walkability itself really is a welcoming feature, and one that allows a close-up look at its well-preserved architectural legacy. This is not by chance or without ongoing commitment, so all of us who call Abington home thank each one of you for continuing the town's leadership's understanding of just how significant this commitment to historic preservation is. In 1970, I'm going to just give everybody a brief run-through of where we have come from and then turn it over to Byram. In 1970, Abington became one of Virginia's very first historic districts when it applied for and was awarded a National Register of Historic Places designation for an 8.5-block area of East Main Street, with an established review board to lead its protection. This first designated district was primarily made up of late 18th and early 19th century buildings. Then in 1983, an extension to the district was officially recognized, which brought in primarily Sinking Springs Cemetery, William King High School property, and a 12-block Valley Street area, as well as just a few blocks in other places. The blocks in this 1983 extension had been excluded from the original district due to the dates of most of those buildings, which were beyond the early 1800s specific to that first designation. Thus, the district today stands that includes the original district footprint plus that 1983 extension, which includes approximately a total of 150 buildings and 2 of those contributing sites. As the report stated, it contains few modern intrusions and is thus an area that can be regarded as a valid and original record of Abington history. In 1998, the first formal preservation planning efforts subsequent to these early activities got underway through the combined efforts of the Town of Abington, Washington County Preservation Foundation, Historical Society of Washington County, and the Abington Rotary and Kiwanis Clubs. The planning project was coordinated by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, and its steering committee was comprised of Lois Humphreys, Mayor of Abington, Al Bradley, Town Planner, Clell Knaps from the Historical Society of Washington County, Harry McKinney, an architect and who represented the Kiwanis Club, Peyton Boyd, who represented the Architecture Review Board, and myself as the chair. Phil Thomason of Thomason and Associates from Nashville, Tennessee, was engaged to conduct an assessment of the district as well as an inventory of the town properties in it. His inventory included the district's buildings plus 100 additional properties within the town limits. So in addition to the inventory, his review and assessment gave us guidance regarding improvements to our protective process itself, as well as identified threats to the current existing situation in the district. His recommendations included several goals that were important and that we accomplished over the next several years, including the adoption of a demolition by neglect ordinance, which prevents an historic structure from falling into the trap of ruinization by simply not maintaining it until it is beyond its saving. Also, another significant goal was met when Abington enacted one of Virginia's few local tax abatement incentives. This was in 2012 for historic district property owners. And another was Abington's application and approval of us as a certified local government, one of only 35 in Virginia. This important status provides a partnership approach between federal, state, and local government preservation efforts, including local review of National Register nominations, as well as, and very importantly, access to the federal and state funds that are allocated specifically for preservation efforts. We have used those funds, those CLG funds here, for example, that paid for the signage throughout our district of our historic district boundaries and attendance at preservation conferences and for speakers. In recent years, very recent years, the town has engaged the help of the Department of Historic Resources to conduct an updated inventory of properties and a review of our original 1970 federal nomination with an eye towards its update. It has never been updated since that 1970 time. And just recently, our review board itself revived our own planning process that we began in 2014, which brings us forward to today, when our board stands ready to complete a new plan for the future, exploring the many ways we can further enhance Abington's success through historic preservation. So in closing, our own historic district's zoning ordinance language refers to it being established for 3 reasons: to promote economic development and financial stability, to use its historic resources for educational purposes, and to enhance the quality of life and sense of place for its residents. Our review board keeps these goals established a long time ago in mind whenever we go about our work and as we plan for the future. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn the podium now over to Byram Giesler, our chair, to address our future. Unless you have questions for me at this point. Thank
Not
you.
yet.
Okay. I won't go far.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Those of us on the historic Preservation Review Board and probably all of you, I'm sure feel very, very passionate about the historic district. We certainly do. And to follow up a little bit of what Betsy was reading from, one of the reasons for the historic district is economic development. And the town recognized that back in the 70s. And I think it's never more true than it is today. You just have to look around the historic district and see the businesses that are going in and the restoration that's occurring and the interest in the town. And, you know, I live right on Main Street. I see tourists constantly up and down the street with the little brochures checking out the buildings. And we have it, we're the envy of a lot of other towns in Southwest Virginia in terms of the interest people have in coming here and experiencing the town. And you know, that hasn't happened just by accident. That's because of a lot of good planning that this town has put into the historic district. So, you know, we really see the historic district as an economic resource for the town. And as Betsy indicated, those boundaries were initially drawn in 1970 and then expanded a little bit beyond that. But that's getting on toward, you know, almost, well, the initial founding 50 years, but close to 50 years since we've really taken a look at the historic district boundaries. And that's part of what we're supposed to recommend to you. And we've been doing that for quite some time now. And it's interesting to note that in 1986, let me back up just a little bit. So we, of course, have the boundary line for our historic district here in the town of Abington. But the state of Virginia, through the Department of Historic Resources, they also have a boundary of our historic district. And that is the same boundary that the Department of Interior uses for historic classifications. And in 1986, the Department of Historic Resources did this really in-depth study and extended both the state and federal historic district boundary. And they have included areas that are not part of our historic district. There are areas that contain significant historic structures, but they're now not part of our historic district. And so as we honed in on this issue and began to make our recommendation, it seemed pretty evident that a lot of the work we were trying to do was done in 1986. And so we're exploring and are interested in getting feedback from you all as to whether there would be, what type of support there would be to consider trying to expand into those districts. Mayana provided me with some maps here, if I can hand these out.
Thank you.
They're a little hard to read. So basically, the areas that are part of the state and federal historic district boundaries but are not part of our historic district are the dark blue. You see at the very bottom it says Historic District Extension, that darkest blue color. Those are the areas that we are interested in including in Abington's historic district. So that would include the William King Museum property. That would include an area of Park Street, basically across the street from 128 Pecan, the restaurant, over to Church Street. So that would be that area where some along the railroad tracks, but they're basically from Pecan Street over to Church Street. And then Oak Hill Drive, which would be the area north of the library up the hill there. You see that on the map? And then also an extension of East Main Street. Right now, the historic district stops at the bottom of the hill at Rain Restaurant. I guess is that Tanner Street?
Yeah.
Tanner Street's the boundary. So the proposal would be to extend the historic district along Main Street further on the south side than on the north side, but I think you can see the properties there. So we think those are significantly important areas that need to be included. You know, fairly recently, I know this council was struggling with, there was a structure that was just one street off the historic district that was a thought that maybe would be demolished. People were unhappy about that, and a great plan was put together and it was saved. But for that, there would have been no way really to save that property. And so we're interested in identifying these areas that have important historic structures. We're 50 years down the road. Some structures that weren't quite as old and significant then, we now value more than ever. And so we've identified these areas as areas we would like to include. And if the council would like to see us pursue this, then what we propose is to do some educational outreach and talk to people in these areas and get the public involved in our process, make them aware of the tax credits that are now available for restoring historic properties, and get community buy-in before we would come back and actually ask the town to take action on this. So we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Of course, Mike Owens is on our board and has been many, many times, and very familiar with these issues also.
Sure. Council, do you have any questions for Ira?
I'll say one comment that that gives some sense to it. It's sort of confusing that the town's footprint is different from the state federal footprint, and to make it much easier to administer and to understand would just be to just do that overlay. I'm not really sure why over these years why ours never did proceed. To do the same thing that the state and federal did. That's just would be just an easier thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So what initiated the Department of Interior? What was the federal agency? Was it Department of Interior?
Yes.
So what initiated them to say we're going to expand it? Is it done infrequently, or is it how do they determine when they're going to look at maybe contributing structures, or is there a study that was commissioned? Maybe you could just educate us on that.
I'm not sure we don't know the answer to
Okay.
that.
I mean, does it happen often, or
Well,
I don't know?
think it does happen very often. I'm not sure exactly why there was this study done in 1986.
Maybe it was out of a request, maybe from a.
Well, in 1970, at the initial one, I think it was done at the town of Abington's request, which
Okay.
we can really applaud Abington for that, for wanting to take care of its historic properties, and it focused on really that part of East Main Street that's the original part of the town.
Well, and the difference between the state one primarily and ours is that you can get tax credits if it's in the state's district.
Yes, I'm sorry, state. I meant to say federal.
Do you believe there was
Right.
resistance in 1986 to move forward?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure. It's one of the confusing things that we have going on, really, which this would sort of solve and make it just one district that is the same one for the state, the same one that we have, and the same one that the federal system has. I know some people wonder if they're eligible for the town's wonderful tax abatement, but if they're not in it, they're in the states, they're not eligible for the towns. They might be eligible for the state. Now, the state has, one, but it's usually for income-producing properties. Isn't that right, Cam?
Yeah, and I misspoke. I meant the state, not the federal. It's the Department of Interior Standards, but it's the federal.
Yeah,
state agency that.
But we added up by Mike's house after 1986 to the other districts, didn't we?
Right. It was
Yeah.
that one little area that someone petitioned. Is that right?
I don't know.
Yes. That one little area was added then.
There's been some small pockets of people voluntarily being added to the historic district, like that lot on Court Street where KVAT moved the house. That lot had been rezoned old and historic before they moved that.
Well, there's that whole area, I don't remember if it's High Street or not, but it is added in, and that was relatively recently that the ordinance was amended to add that into old and historic, so it's just sort of been piecemeal.
It has, and
I think, to answer your questions, because Betsy wasn't in charge, but that, it was just these things that got initiated and then other things came along and it sort of got dropped, but there have been plans in place for decades really to look at this, but it just sort of, other things got in the way, I think.
So that's exactly the point, Cam, is that we just thought we would, unless you object, we just thought we ought to start looking at it now and give it a big look, and then do a lot of public input. and then all decide as a community whether we want to do that or not.
I think it's great, and Byron, you said it best, you know, with all the public input and sort of soliciting comments from the people that will be affected. I think that's perfect. That's the way you go about trying to expand and making sure everybody's educated. So I'm all for
Yeah.
it.
There's great advantage to the homeowner, to the property owner to be in the district, and that's what we need to convey.
So do we
I
need
think
to
you
ma-
might find some people that don't.
That's where the education comes in.
I am, are you envisioning, just holding like a public information meeting, or are
Yeah.
you looking, okay,
Yeah, we
something like that we could do?
We probably would bring
yeah.
in, I know that during this 1998 time that we did our big preservation plan, we brought in the mayor of Charleston. I don't know if you all remember that. Anybody remembers that? In this room, we had the room packed. He talked about the merits of why Charleston was so successful was because of its protection of its historic properties. I mean, we can bring in people from the historic Department of Historic Resources, or other people like Mayor Joe Riley, those sorts of folks, and just, you know, have a very open discussion and settle any kind of anxieties that people might have, or misconceptions. And, you know, just take our time. I don't think we're in a rush. I don't think we should be in a rush. I think we should just, you know, get consensus and go forward if we want to.
So the goal is to develop a finalized plan if we agree to move forward, and I think we will, and then come back to the council and present it as far as to move forward with that plan.
Right, and so I think the reason that they're here in part at least is that what I said when I came to HPRB and we talked about this, and this was around the same time as this house, and sort of piecing together all the background and that sort of thing. Ultimately, if the council were to decide this, that would be a zoning decision, so it would have to be an ordinance that was passed, like one that was passed today. So I suggested that maybe they sort of take the temperature of council of, no, we'll never expand it, then they would be wasting their time. But if you're amenable for them to start the process, then this would kind of be the first step.
I mean, it's obviously still relevant, just like we've dealt with another, you know, issue recently, just gather some public feedback, because I think, you know, there are some people who I think are all over the place with this, and so I think some of them could be from misconceptions, and so I think getting the public feedback is a really good, a good idea. And I know there's been some individual property owners that have been spoken to. I actually talked to one of them, just because, you know, it came up in a discussion. But I will say that because you talk about zoning ordinance, you know, we are going through our zoning code update right now, and so if the council were to decide to amend the old historic district, then it would be, you know, an appropriate time, you know, to do this, because I think by next summer, we expect to have our final zoning ordinance and zoning map adopted, so that could be incorporated into that. So, just wanted to throw that out there, because some of you.
That's a good timeline.
Yeah.
And I know that the Department of Historic Resources hopes, and I'm sure they said this to you too, that we can upgrade and refresh our 1970 designation. You know, it's one of the oldest ones, and it has never been updated. So we will look at that too. I mean, we just will look at the whole thing now, unless you tell us to stop. And then come back, you know, in a timely way to.
So do we need a motion to do that?
I don't think so, just a consensus. I know what you're thinking. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think I'll offer, you know, some help on the staff side, and Mayana and the staff to try to help coordinate some of those public meetings and provide space available. And we'll make sure that we notice everything properly in the event that there's gonna be, you know, if there's gonna be a majority of HPRB members there, we'll make sure that Kim, you know, posts a notice, and so we can work on assisting.
That's good.
Assisting in those.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
thanks for coming out. I
Well,
think
thank
you've
you.
got it.
Thank you all very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So that brings us to council member reports. Council members, do we have any reports we'd like to make? Anything? Okay. All right. We do have a closed session on the agenda for tonight. Council, are we gonna take advantage of that closed session for the appointments?
I think so.
Think so? Okay. All right.
I need to
At that point in time, I would entertain a motion to do so.
I'll make that motion.
So motion by Vice Mayor Quetch to move into closed session. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Cook.
If you don't mind, Donna, would you read the next to the last page there? A1.
Can we read it?
Or it might be.
I'll read it.
Mike's got it.
Go ahead.
If council so desires, closed session pursuant to Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, section 2.2-3711A1, for the purpose of considering applications for appointment for position of Infrastructure Advisory Committee, Planning Commission, and Board of Zoning Appeals.
All right. We need to redo our motion, or are we good?
Motion subject to that section.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion by Vice Mayor Quetch.
So Mayor Quetch, you amend your motion to?
Yes, I
that?
do.
All right.
Thank you.
So amended, motion by Vice Mayor Quetch and a second by Ms. Pillion.
Sure.
All right. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion? Aye. Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye.
Lincoln, interesting.
We gotta put you on something. You need to apply. All right.
Y'all
Sounds
are
like the
freezing
mics
in
are on.
here.
So it's just like this side.
Guess first we need a motion to come back into open session. I would entertain the motion to do so.
This right here.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Vice Mayor Quest to come back into open session. Do I have a second?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Thank you. We'll come back into open session first. I have a second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. And then we need to certify.
I move that the town council certify that in closed session that just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session, and two, lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in this motion.
Mr. Owens, do you so certify?
I certify.
Ms. Pillion?
I so certify.
Ms. Quetch?
I so certify.
And Mayor Webb?
I so certify. Well, that brings us to the end of the agenda, so unless I forgot something?
No, actually, I was gonna.
You gonna make
Stay-
those motions?
Oh, yeah. That's bad, that's bad,
Well, I
yeah,
was
thank you,
gonna
Kim. I was gonna say, dang, we're missing something.
I was gonna say something under my report, but skipped right over it.
Yeah,
Because
well,
Stephanie was on there and I didn't wanna
It's-
move it.
Hold on, let's do the motion.
too late now. We
Wait,
gotta do
the motion is to
appointments, yeah.
adjourn it.
Yeah, no, I haven't done it
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry, I thought you made a
rescind
motion.
that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
No, we did go into closed session to make some appointments to boarding
Oh, the
committees,
appointments.
of which we have two tonight. We have the Infrastructure Advisory Committee reappointment of Charlene Trulick, who is eligible to serve an additional term. I'd open the floor, if anyone would like to appoint anyone.
I'll make that motion that we reappoint Charlene Trulick to the Infrastructure Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Owens to reappoint Charlene Trulick, to the Infrastructure Advisory Committee, second by Vice Mayor Quesh. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. And then we also have the Board of Zoning Appeals appointment to fill a vacancy of Wayne Austin as a representative for the Planning Commission. I'd entertain a motion, to appoint somebody there.
I will make a motion to appoint Kenny Schuman.
Appointment by, a motion by Ms. Pillion to appoint Kenny Schuman, to fill the vacancy of Wayne Austin on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. And that brings us to the end of the agenda. Jimmy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to see, as many of you know, a couple months ago, we put out an RFP for use of the train depot, and we're not able to reach a consensus. Town council was not able to reach a consensus on what we want to do with that property, so Tanya Triplett had a conversation over the weekend with Dave McLeish, who is the manager at the farmer's market, about possibly utilizing the space for the winter months, for, to see if there's interest with some of the vendors down there, to utilize it for a small fee. And it came up, she talked to me, or she sent me a text, and over the weekend, I think after she talked to him, and just wanted to gauge if there was any concern or any objection to doing that. We still haven't really figured out what we want to do there long-term, but it could provide an avenue for some of the vendors to continue to offer some of their products over the winter months, and I would have Tanya work with them on that to see if it's feasible, and Dave could talk to some of the vendors and see if that's something that they're interested in doing. So I just wanted to throw that out there before. Like I said, this would not be a long-term thing. It just would be a trial if it works, and we don't really know, but it just seemed like a good idea. So any objections or concerns of me at least starting that dialogue with having Tanya talk to the farmer's market? Okay.
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, we'll start that and see where we get with it. So we'll see if there's they can gauge some interest and see if that's something that the vendors would be interested in doing, so. Okay.
All right. Then, we're adjourned.
Good.
Thank you, Derek. If we could turn our planner
Property.
to Janine.